let's talk about how you can keep large bodies of content up to date, whether that's docs, blog posts, product pages, whatever it is, and kind of why you should bother doing that. So what's the problem, right? The problem is you publish stuff, and at the time you publish it, it's reviewed, it's true, right, to the best of your knowledge. And then over time, that truth decays, right? Because the ground truth changes, right? Your products are updated, the market changes, what customers want changes, how we talk about things changes. The only constant is change, right? So the ground truth changes, your content, if it doesn't change, it inevitably drifts from the truth. And why does this really matter? I think this is more salient now, and we hear more people talking about, kind of content engineering and keeping large bodies of content up to date because now we have a new user for that content, right? And that user AI doesn't have the kind of like tribal knowledge that we have as people. Say you build a developer tool, right? And you have lots of tutorials and documentation. You also have other developers on your team who maybe have skills with that particular tool who you talk to, and you are in that community and you understand like, yeah, this product, they're not really investing much in that product. Like maybe we shouldn't use that, or yeah, that functionality, it's like kind of there, but it's deprecated. AI, for as great as it is at many things, it's not great at that context, right? That kind of tribal knowledge of what to trust, what not to trust. So it takes your content, which may have drifted from the truth. It takes what you're still saying and it presents it as the truth to the user, right? And it does that really persuasively in a really clean context. This is especially problematic if we're talking about dev tools again, in the context of coding agents, right? If a developer is using Cursor, right, and Cursor is fetching context from an AI model and then making updates in the developer's code base, those updates could be based on inaccurate or old tutorials or old docs, old pricing information, if pricing is a concern. So there's lots of risk that AI is just like getting bad information from your content and users are taking action on that. So the problem ultimately at the end of the day is annoyed users or customers, right? If what they're getting from the model isn't true. So how can we fix that? I think there's many like technical implementations you could think about for how to fix this, but I think it all comes down to kind of four steps, right? You want to extract the assertions from your own content and from some source of ground truth, right? So what that ground truth is going to change. The example I'll walk through in a minute is specifically SEC filings were our ground truth when we were writing content about what companies do, like what does Snowflake do, what does OpenAI do, although they don't have SEC filings, but neither here nor there. So you want to extract assertions from your own content and then pick some source of ground truth. That could be your own product docs, API docs. That could be your, PIM if you're selling, physical products, whatever it is. You want to compare those assertions, right? Compare your content, compare the ground truth, and say, okay, what's changed in here? And you want to, based on those comparisons, propose updates, right? AI is really good at these three. And then you want to publish. You want to somehow get those changes back into wherever you're publishing, whether that's your CMS, your repo, whatever. And like I said, AI is literally built for this, right? AI couldn't be a better tool for this job because it understands all of the nuances of the differences between language, right? If you give it very specific instructions, what you're looking for, and then you review the output. So what does this look like in practice, right? So in the example that I mentioned, so this was for technically a blog I work on with Justin Gage, who started it, and it explains software engineering concepts to non-engineers, right? So for one example, it breaks down what companies do. So like, what does Cloudflare do? What does Snowflake do, right? So Justin writes these posts, and then over time, of course, those companies like Snowflake or Cloudflare introduce new products. They serve new types of customers. So we need to check the ground truth, which is ultimately SEC filings, like legal documents with what they're doing, and compare those. So basically, we ingested our own content, which was pretty easy because it was already in a Git repo, right, in Markdown files. But we have it in a CMS now. We could just query it from the CMS with an API. And then there's a number of APIs that you can use to fetch SEC filings. That was our ground truth. And we basically ran them through a prompt, right, that said, go through this content and extract all of the assertions that this content is making, the kind of confidence of the assertion, whatever, entities are referenced, like products or customers or, geographic locations for markets, right? And then log those into a database, right? So we're just using a simple Postgres database. You could use any database here. You could use a Google Sheet if you really wanted to. It doesn't really matter. And what the prompt looks like here was quite long. I'll show you the whole thing, but it's basically identify factual assertions, right, about the company, its products, services, financials, or operations. We want concrete, not vague statements, factual, not opinions, right? And this prompt worked really, really well. And basically what it does is it outputs in a structured fashion these assertions that we can then log to our database, right? Provide some examples. Pretty straightforward. Worked really well. And then the next step is to compare those assertions, right? So you have them in a database, you fetch them from a database, whatever that is. You compare them, again, via another LLM call, and then you write your next steps back to the database. And similar kind of prompt, right? You set the task, you're making a comparison. This was like really rough in terms of, we didn't bother like optimizing this. We just passed all of the assertions from the articles, passed all the assertions from ground truth, and said, hey, make a comparison. And as a next step, so basically it was either this assertion is confirmed, like what we wrote initially is still true, nullified, it was contradicted, qualified, like we might want to look at it, there's something we could update, outdated, meaning we should probably remove it, or uncovered, meaning it just like wasn't referenced, in which case there's nothing to really do there because there's nothing in the ground truth. So basically this outputted a similar structure. Let me go down. So a structure like this, that would say, okay, what we said before is confirmed by the evidence from this ground truth, score it with some type of confidence score. And that's really it. And again, this worked really, really well. The third step was to take those assertion comparisons and actually propose updates to the underlying articles based on what we learned there. And that could be, hey, there's something new we should write about, or all of those kind of like, this is outdated, this is qualified, and we should maybe update this in a certain way. So we fetch all those assertion comparisons from the database. Similar LLM calls, last one, I'll show you the prompt in a sec, to draft those updates to sections. We write those potential updates to the database, and then we want a review process, right? So for us, this was put all the new stuff that we might want to write about into Google Docs so that Justin could go through and review it, and really, he wrote his own stuff, but like took the research as a starting point. And then in Google Sheets, all of the specific, like, hey, we should remove this is no longer accurate, or we should update this specific line because the product is called something different now, or the revenue number is outdated, or something like that. Just reviewed those line by line in Google Sheets and said approve, deny, or like update the text, right? And then push those back up to the database to be able to actually update the articles. So this is what this prompt looked like, and it's basically generate suggested updates for an article about this company based on these comparison results. Passing the assertion comparison results, passing new assertions that we found that weren't in the original article that we might want to write about, and propose updates, right? So addition, modification, correction, or removal in the actual article. We passed the article body itself. So again, like not doing anything fancy with like chunking, didn't really need to here yet. Just passed everything into the context window and outputted specific updates to specific sections, right? So the TLDR needed, this detail in terms of revenue, right? Here's the source. Here's where this came from, the ground truth. Here's where this was in the original article, right? So let's go ahead and update this. And when you output this, this is like a very specific instruction that you can then pass to a language model to make the update, right? And review the update because you know where it's supposed to go, you know what the ground truth is, and you can get very, very specific with your instructions. So that's obviously, we all learn this in different ways working with AI, but the more specific you can be, the better the output is going to be. And this entire process, right, if we could view this in layers, is getting incrementally more specific as you go and making sure that each stage that you're going through to get more specific, you kind of have the ability to review and confirm that, hey, this truth that we're trying to impose on our writing is actually accurate, and the system isn't doing anything crazy. And it's stored in a database, right? So you can just review all of that, right? It's not just like, hey, update these articles based on SEC filings. It's not going to be able to like do that effectively. So once we have those like structured updates, we fetch those. I couldn't find the prompt for this one. I think I did it just in Cursor because it was easier to like do it on the fly. But like fetch the reviewed updates, implemented those updates in our case that was like markdown files, and then it wrote those updates directly to our CMS, which was a Git repo at the time. We now use Sanity CMS, but this was nice because it was all version controlled, and Cursor would make those updates, and we could just review them like in a regular Git workflow, just like it was a human making the change. So putting it all together, what does this workflow look like? And I guess I want to talk about like what are the core skills here in terms of content engineering that can be applicable to any type of content generation or content update process. I think there's a few. One is prompt engineering, right? So the ability to write prompts for extracting things like extracting assertion, making comparisons, drafting article updates. A big part of that is learning to write like structured data in terms of JSON outputs of what you expect to see, right? That was kind of the straw that stirs the drink for all of these three prompts here, was the ability to say, hey, give me this JSON structured data. I'm going to put it in my database, and then I can, really act on it. And once you have the ability to write prompts that can extract structured data and the ability to work in a database, right? Sure why we have two databases here. Let's fix that. The ability to work in a database, right? So extract data, write it to a database, and then do something with it. You are really cooking with gas. And like, I think you can do real, whatever the positive frame of damage is, it's not damage. You can make a lot of things happen content engineering wise if you're comfortable, extracting structured data from content and working with databases. And making some API calls, right? Like we needed to write some API calls to extract this ground truth. Maybe we needed to write API calls to like extract content from our CMS and work within in a version controlled sandbox where you feel comfortable iterating on this whole life cycle without breaking your content or messing something up in your kind of production systems, right? So I think version control is the thing that makes all of this possible. This is what allows software engineers, right, to use coding agents because you have version control. You have this like trusted sandbox, a branch in a repo that an agent can act on, and it's safe. It's not going to like go into production. It's not going to break anything. You can always review its work, delete its work. It's all safe. So that's really it. I think the main thing I wanted to share with this is once you learn to work with these fundamental tools, APIs, prompt engineering, databases, version control, like I think you can really be, again, dangerous in a good way as a content engineer. And I'm looking forward to sharing more about how to build systems like this for content.